In the meantime, no wonder Joe Biden brought top Treasury guys along with him to Greece. He was the one bearing gifts and hinting at promises of aid, even as Congress balks at the notion. My next guest says the U.S. could go ahead and send $100 billion to the taxpayer money, to the International Monetary Fund, without your approval, without Congress's approval, without anyone's approval. James Rickards is author of Currency Wars. He knows of what he speaks. And James, I suspect the president, realizing the appetite in Congress, will go ahead and do this if everything hits the fan. What do you think?
Well, I agree with that, Neil. The president clearly has the authority. Now, whether he uses it or not is a political question, and you have to weigh how much you would anger the Congress and anger the people. So it depends a little bit on how bad things get. I think the good news is that Europe is emerging with a plan. I expect that by Friday, the markets will have a lot more confidence in Europe. But if that falls apart and things really become desperate, sure, they'll just go ahead and disperse the money, because the IMF is the last firewall. You've got, the economies there are on the rocks, or some of them are anyway.
No, I know all that,
forth.
James, and that's astutely pointed out. But the fact of the matter is that's a lot of money, and if we're going to kick in $100 billion more to the IMF, and you don't even need an okay on the president doing this, then what are these other bodies for?
Well, the thing is, the markets just hold a gun to the government's heads and say, give me money or I'll shoot. This happened with TARP. Remember, first time TARP failed. It failed in the Congress, and the stock market went down to 800 points.
So their argument is better to address the nightmare you don't know than face the nightmare's reaction you'll get if you do.
Right, but that's always the argument. You never really have a way of testing that. We just seem to keep writing checks.
A lot of people are going to look at this and say, since you can't prove a negative, in other words, you can't prove how bad things would be if we never did TARP, you can't prove how bad things would be if we potentially commit $100 billion to the IMF, you're in a losing argument, aren't you? I mean, it wasn't a good argument for Republicans in 2008 when they were backing what President Bush was doing. I suspect it might not be for President Obama.
Well, the good news, of course, in this country we have elections. So in 2010 we saw a turnover of parties in one of the houses, partly a reaction to the excesses of TARP, I think, and government spending, obviously. And we're going to have another election in 2012. So it takes time. It's frustrating, but there is a chance to correct these things. But as of now, the president does have that authority.
Interesting. I did not know that. But then again, you educate me every time you come on. James, thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Neil.
Meanwhile, you ever have a snow cone machine as a kid? The one with the crank in the back to churn the